I think everybody here probably knows Martha. She's been a member of the society for many, many, many years. She's been a native and grown up here and all this. I've read your book. It's really, really good. So I am really proud that you've come to speak to our group tonight, and I'm really proud of you for writing this book. So here's Martha Whiteley.
Can't thank y'all enough. I'm almost overwhelmed. It's so good to see y'all. And before I get started, I would like to introduce first my family. Would my son and grandsons and granddaughter-in-law stand up, please?
Yay.
And I think I have a nephew. Would you stand up, please? And my brothers and sisters in Christ, would y'all stand up? And many other friends and relatives, please stand up. Anybody I missed?
Everybody stand up.
Everybody.
Okay, back in late February of 2012, my phone rang. It was Linda Bradbury. She asked if I would write some articles for A Look Back column that the Historical Society agreed to do, and which would be published in the Baxter Bulletin on Mondays. She knew my family had lived in Buford and Buffalo, and that some of us kids attended school at Buford. I told her I would. So I got busy and wrote one about the Buford School and the cross at Buffalo City, being as Easter Sunday was on April 8th that year. In their March 19th issue, the Bulletin published my article about the cross. Between March 2012 and mid-2014, I wrote 55 plus history articles and assisted others in writing some. But my love for history did not stop there. Where I live at Buffalo City on Echo Ridge, and having lived there 31 years, I look across Buffalo Shoals on the White River. Whenever I do, I can just see and hear the Indians and the wood buffalo and visualize how busy old Buffalo City was when it existed before 1929. Since 1906, the railroad track runs between our place and the White River. Coming up the track, the train usually honks 3 times and reverberates off a bluff. Now, can you see why I call it Echo Ridge? The mining era at Rush in the lower Buffalo River occurred in the in the late 1800s and early 1900s. My grandparents on both mother and daddy's side, my mom and dad, and my older siblings lived on Cow Creek, which flows into the Buffalo River from its west side. They also lived at Advance and Lone Rock from the late 1930s until early 1947. In May of 2014, my son Greg and I motored up the aqua-colored water of the Buffalo River to Cook Creek, which is right here, and is a short distance from the confluence of the Buffalo with the White River. After mooring the boat, we climbed the 3/4 mile steep trail to the cross on top of the bluff, which you can see when you round the curve at Buffalo City, where the sign put up by the state says Buffalo City. Coming back down, we ventured upon a coach whip snake. Fortunately for itself, it scurried in the opposite direction. We kept walking the old trail until we came to Cook Creek, where we found some morel mushrooms. This adventure lasted us about 5 hours. It was definitely a day and time well spent. After that outing, in absorbing my surroundings daily along the White River, I felt the need to write about the history that I knew and heard about the Buffalo River area and old Buffalo City, because eventually it's going to be lost. And some has already been lost now that the Buffalo River is a part of the National Park Service. My family and other people who are interested need to know too, because several of our elderly loved ones and 2 of my children who were history buffs have passed away. A cousin and I talked recently about memories from our childhood at Buffalo, now known as Buffalo City. He recalled when we were kids and were visiting his grandparents, who were my aunt and uncle. Instead of me being outside or wherever with the kids, I would be with the grown-ups, listening to them talk about things that happened when they were growing up and during their later years. So my writing history came as no surprise to him or my younger sister. The Buffalo River has been a part of the National Park Service since 1972. Remaining signs of any human habitation are slowly disappearing, and some has already disappeared. Even the cemeteries are being forgotten and neglected. Out of us 13 siblings, 8 are no longer here, and we remaining 5 are not getting any younger. I want my son and grandsons and my granddaughter-in-law, my granddaughter and great-grands, my nieces, nephews, and cousins to know how our families lived and get an idea as to where they lived after the Civil War and how the area was in the beginning before we knew it. My youngest sister married my brother-in-law, who is a native Texan. They've been married for over 35 years. After reading this book, he was totally amazed because he had no clue as to how his wife's family, or our family, his wife being my youngest sister, lived back then. And she had managed their calibration and repair business for over 35 years too. Lynn Baker, my brother-in-law, and others who rarely read a book to the end have told me they could not put it aside until they read the whole book. One of my favorite comments has been, "You took me there." For me, my family, and others' responses and comments are priceless about my book. Their reactions are tucked on the tablet in the corner of my heart and speaks volumes. Do y'all have any questions?
You've got your book here, right, for people to buy?
Right. Yes, it's over there.
An autograph.
Yes. And they're $20 a copy. Jeff?
When's the next one coming out?
Not sure.
Okay.
You don't have to do the whole thing, but why don't you tell us one of the stories from the book?
Oh, okay. There's so many. Well, one of the stories, and I have some people questioning me about it, asking me about it. Okay. My dad, he went into the cave. There's a back entrance to the cave at Buffalo City that you can see across from the boat landing at the White River at Buffalo City. If you look straight across at the old part of the boat ramp, you'll see a hole in the bluff, and that's the front entrance to the cave. Well, there was also a back entrance back when he was young. Well, one day, he discovered it one day, but he did, and he said, well, I'll go back sometime when I have more time and look it over. Well, he did. He went into that cave. What he saw scared him so bad. When he come out, he could not talk about it. He never did talk about it. Nobody is for sure what he saw. But I kind of think it was he saw a bunch of Indian remains, yes, because the bluff, cliff dwellers lived there, and the Indians lived at Buffalo. So I'm just about sure that's what he saw, because when it came to things like that and to cemeteries, he was a little afraid.
So in this book, Short is your dad?
Yes, yes.
And you might tell how he got that name.
Okay, when he was 7 or 8 years old, back then, when they were mining up there, they had a lot of outbreak of typhoid fever. But this was back in the he would have been 7, so about the like around 1913, 14. He come down with typhoid fever. And of course, nobody else could really be around him. And when he did get over it, he didn't grow. He just stayed the same height for a number of years. And and then when he became a teenager, he didn't really grow until he became more of a teenager. But people nicknamed him Shorty because he was short.
But Martha, he did achieve kind of an average height, though. I thought I
Yes,
remember
he got.
being a tall man.
Yes, after he reached his upper teens, he started growing, and he was tall. He became really tall.
Your mama.
Yeah.
After he went in the cave, he became tall.
Scared it into him.
And let me get one of my books. I want to point out something to y'all.
So where did you start school, Martha?
Buford.
And Gary went to Buford too, right?
No, he went to
He went
Midway.
to Midway, okay.
Now, on the front, this photo was taken down. If y'all know where the Four Corners is at Buford, you turn like say we're coming from Mountain Home. We turn right on 126, which is Buffalo Road. That log cabin that sits on the right, the log cabin was there. And of course, my dad, he usually had a mule. And I had graduated the night before, and he knew that I was going to be leaving, and to deal with his sadness, he just got his mule and went and started plowing. So we stopped down by there, and Gary took the picture, and it was taken back in 1968. Now see, I'm telling my age. And then on the back of it is a picture of my mother. She always had chickens. And this picture was taken when we lived at Lone Pine. There was a school at Lone Pine. I don't know if any of y'all know that, but there was a school at Lone Pine.
Where was that? About where?
It was, have you been there, Dale, where the road turns up to that new subdivision on the Fletcher Mountain? Okay, there's a county road that turns off to the left, County Road 635. It was down there.
Down that ridge?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it was, there is a house there now. The old schoolhouse, the old Lone Pine Schoolhouse burned back in 72, in the summer of 72. My parents sold it in 66, and the people that bought it went out of town, and it burned while they were gone out of town.
As I recall, Martha, that school set back off the main road, probably what? Quarter mile? I mean, it seemed like it set way back.
Well, not that far off of the county road, it didn't.
No.
No.
But the,
But
but
off
the
of
Buffalo
it
Road.
was, would it have been a half a mile?
About
A
maybe.
quarter of a mile,
Yeah,
because
maybe.
when we lived in it, us kids had to walk out to the main highway, you know, to catch the school bus.
Out to 126.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about Buford School, because now that we own that building, people might want to know about the history, and I know you wrote an article about it.
Okay. The last year I attended there was the year of 5960. And I believe in the spring of that year, or it might have been in 58, one of the things I remember is the old school itself sat down behind the school that's there now. They moved it over to Mountain Village, 1890. And it's the one that burned back in 2004 over there.
Okay. So was it the newer one? The one we have now is nice and big, but so was the older one smaller than?
Yes, yeah, it was basically one room.
Okay. So we have 2 rooms, 2 big rooms, of course, and a stage. So did they have the classes on both sides, or?
Well, when I went to school there, I think there was 8 grades went there when it first opened, but then it narrowed down to 6 grades. And when I went to school there, we just was in the room next to the fire department building.
Oh, okay.
That curtain that
Mhm.
was down, stayed down all the time we was there. And of course, it was heated with wood. And my dad, at one time, he would, when he would go out to work, he would stop by and build a fire in the wood stove.
So the room on the left, where the kitchen part is now,
Yes,
and then
That
the other
was-
side had the stage. Should y'all ever use the stage?
yes, at Christmas time, we had plays, usually had a play there. And they would raise that wood curtain, and which gave us a lot more room. And then on the stage too, there was a wall up there. There was a hall around the whole part of the stage.
Okay. Huh.
I can share a Buffalo River story, or city story with you if you want to hear it.
Please.
I had my dad, well, Dale and Nettie Tipton bought the old store building, and lived there a while. And so Nettie is my 4th cousin, and Dad, I guess it was the last trip I brought him up here, and he was 90 then. And so we're looking over everything, and he starts talking about this and that. And the story I remember is he and Hobson Wind, is anyone who knew Hobby Wind?
I remember.
Anyhow, he and Hobby were over there. Probably, Dad was born in 1909, so it probably 1920, 21, somewhere around there. And someone was building a small steamboat down in front of the store building in the river. There must have been a slough back in those days that came off the river a little bit. And the man was putting his boiler in and had a young man helping him. This is Dad's story now. And he said they got in an argument, the older man and the young man. The young man picked up one of the guy's wrenches and went strolling off with it toward the store building. Dad said, Hobby and I were sitting out on the steps drinking the soda pop. He said, all of a sudden the guy cuts down on the young man with a .45. And he said, the bullets were flying, and he said, right there, we hunkered down behind the concrete porch.
Oh,
Wow.
That's one story.
well, too, if you go down there today, there was a ferry there at one time that my dad ran. And it cuts off right after you cross the track, that railroad track there, to the right. And Gary and I walked down there one day, and we could see the remains of part of the old ferry, wasn't it?
Well, it was the planking for so the wagons could get on and off the ferry without getting stuck. They had a wooden planking ramp, and it's still there, part of it's still there in the mud after all these years.
Well, I should have pointed out, Dale's wife was born in Buffalo City. Nettie Bagwell.
Okay.
The house is still there. Her dad worked for Missouri Pacific.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm telling you that.
Well, I'm glad you did.
I'm a newbie up here, but was Buffalo City, the major part of it back in the heyday, on the Marion County side? Was that where they?
Yes, till about 1929.
Okay, and
And
what happened? What?
The railroad, they were, shipping things by rail now then. And they moved it on this side, and there was a guy come in and he built he put in the old store building and put up the cross and,
Okay.
and
And the other part just basically disappeared over, or?
yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
How big did Buffalo get to be?
I don't recall. There were several families that lived down there, but I really couldn't tell you how many people, as far as give you a census.
When was the heyday? I mean, when was it
There was a school there in the early 40s. Miss Mossy,
Aussie Pitcher?
yes, she taught there. And the old school building is still there. She taught in the 40s. 50s, about the 50s is when it started disappearing.
Do they still have any trains that go through there, or?
Oh, yes, there's trains.
Okay, they just don't stop.
No, they don't stop.
Coal trains, aren't
Mostly empty
Mostly.
coal trains going back up to where they come from, what goes
Yes.
through there now.
Okay.
Martha, is there a possibility that you could make a book out of those articles that you wrote for the paper?
Well, somebody else mentioned that. If I do another one, that may be what I.
Back to the size of Buffalo, when I was a girl, I used to spend the night with a girl that lived down there. And, when I was probably third grade and fourth. And I'd say there were 10 or 12 homes inhabited there. Up on the hill and down by the depot.
Yes.
And then on the road coming in, the Stevens and the Osborns lived up there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Queens used to live down there. He worked for the railroad.
Yes, they lived in the section house.
So it was never real big.
No, I don't think it was big like Cotter was big. Cotter was big.
Cottage,
you know.
yeah.
And when you get to that curve where I said the Buffalo City sign is back to the left, the county road, I forgot the number, but back down in there, of course, there's houses all down along the river
New
now.
ones, though.
Well, back when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, my parents cut hay off of that whole field. And the banks of the White River, you could walk down to the bank. But today, of course, it's privately owned. But the bank is to the river now is so steep. It is steep. Jeff?
Yeah. You were talking about the school there at Buffalo City or now, is that where the signers live up past y'all's house? Was that an old school building there? You know, between y'all's road and Kelly Harrington? On the right? That
Okay.
old rock building? Well,
Are you talking about the Mennonite church?
yeah.
That area there?
may be it.
Okay, now the rock building was a church, but up above, on top of the hill, now they had school there for
A few
a
years.
few years, but very few years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And your dad, I think, went to school when up there,
Oh, okay.
and then they moved to Buford.
I was asking my aunt if that school, I started first grade, if it was the one that was in the basement of that church.
Yeah.
She said yes. that it
Yeah,
was
first they were in the basement of that church.
church, and then
Okay,
they
later
built
years,
that building
they
up.
built it up the height.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that's,
But it was a private school, wasn't public.
I know the one up though was public for a while though. No?
I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so.
by
I
my,
don't know.
by my family going there, I figure it was public.
Well, I went there too.
me too, we didn't have any money.
One crush head money.
No, that wasn't it.
Well, it was not state funded,
Okay.
I don't think.
It was a church-sponsored school.
Yes,
Mm.
the Mennonite church.
Yeah. Any more questions?
You might know, Helen, back then, when that was, when those schools was down there, it was part of Norfolk School District.
Oh, yes. Back in the 40s, I think, kind of like around 47 or thereabouts, those schools was part of the Norfolk District.
Even before that.
Okay. And,
Yeah, I believe it was when they consolidated all the schools all over the state, I believe.
okay, but then next, the next thing I heard, they were part of, like the one at Buford, they were in,
No.
yes, they become part of Mountain Home. And a lot of people have questioned how Mountain Home was able to get that school by it being Norfolk. And did you know anything about the Flat Rock School that was down at Cartney? Okay.
Where was it at?
Cartney.
Oh, Cartney Road. Mhm.
Do you remember ever seeing a steamship or steamboat on the river?
No.
That was before you.
Oh,
yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah.
When did the steamships, when did they stop? They built the dam in 50, right? Or-
Yes.
The steamboat stopped about the time the railroad was built.
Yes, and the railroad was completed in
Okay, I'm
1906.
I did find an article in Baxter Bulletin on the microfilm the other day that said one of the Corps of Engineers officers brought a steamboat up to about Buffalo in 1910.
Okay, that's-
the latest
Yes,
one that came up river.
yes.
Is that the one you write about where they had so much trouble getting up the river?
I don't recall.
Okay.
And that was the one that they run up, the only ship that went up to Rush, the steamship. that run-
Oh,
that
that,
one.
yeah.
That one went up to Rush, but they had such a hard time getting up there. It took them like 2.5 days, that when they got up there, they immediately come back down
And never did it again.
and never to try it again. And I believe that name of that one was the Randall.
Where was that Flat Rock School? I've worked around people that talk about it, but I never did know where it was.
Well, it's before you get, have you been down there since the Buford Fire Station was put in there at the road that went to, we always knew him as Marvin Bowden? He always lived down in there.
Yeah, I know where his place was.
Okay, it's back this way up at that last curve.
Just as you drop off the hill.
Yeah, just as you drop off the
It's
hill.
still there.
Yeah, it's out to the left.
I think there's a street sign that says Schoolhouse Road there.
That, yes,
Is that what
probably,
we were talking about?
yeah. If it says Schoolhouse Road, that's where was that?
I've heard several old people talk about the Flat Rock School.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Well, thank you for listening. Y'all have been a good audience. I appreciate it.